Day one of the Big 12 Media Days completed. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the quarterbacks. And we've talked about a lot of Big 12 quarterbacks lately the past few weeks just because the Big 12 Media Days have been coming up. And we've had a lot of film breakdowns of Spencer Sanders, Spencer Rattler, Jared Daggy, Brock Purdy, Max Duggan, several guys at the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in, excuse me, in the Big 12. We've had some film breakdowns come out, and I want to go over who we think the number 2 quarterback in the Big 12 is right now. I think that the leading candidate is probably Brock Purdy, but I think it's fair to say that Spencer Rattler is the number 1 quarterback heading into 2021 and the Big 12, and people will argue that he's the number 1 quarterback in all of college football. And we actually put out a film breakdown of Spencer Rattler and kind of the character traits that make him so good and some improvement areas this morning, actually. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. But today I want to talk about who is the number 2 quarterback, because there's several guys that could potentially take that number 2 spot. Even though Brock Purdy is for sure the favorite, I think there's some arguments from several other guys. But before we jump into those arguments and what Brock Purdy brings to the table, I just want to encourage you to consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you like any quarterback related content, whatever it may be. If it's quarterback related, it is fair game here. So first things first, let's talk about Brock Purdy. And we just put out another film breakdown of him recently. So he's someone that we've dug into the film a lot lately. We've had 2 film dabs of him the past 2 weeks. So if you're interested, go find that again on YouTube. There will be no film on this actual video. We're just going to talk about some of these quarterbacks. So Brock Purdy came bust on the scene in 2018, had a great season, great year. 2019, another good year. Then 2020 kind of took a step back. I don't think it was all his fault. There's a lot of kind of pressure on him, and the offense asked him to do a lot to lead them. But nonetheless, still took a step back from a lot of people's point of view, but he still brings a lot to the table, can make a lot of good plays, good within the pocket. Whenever he stays calm is when he's at his best. So when we look at the interceptions that we've seen him throw, a lot of times it's him not staying calm, not remaining calm, kind of not freaking out, but just at the very last second, kind of throwing it up, forcing a ball. Whenever he remains calm, takes what the defense gives him, that's a big theme for Brock Purdy. When he takes what the defense gives him, then he kind of is able to remain and play within the offense. I think that's going to set up some big plays. So here's some numbers real quick from Brock Purdy. His first year starting in 2018, his yards per attempt were 10.2. In 2019, it was 8.4, and then last year in 2020, it was 7.5. So it's gone down each year. Not really entirely sure why, just the simple fact that deep shots aren't being taken as much as they should. That could be offensive play calling, Purdy, a little bit of both, whatever it may be. But I think we want to see that number get up just a little bit more. But still, he's had a lot of production. I think, in my opinion, he's definitely the number 2 quarterback going into this year. But there's a few guys, other guys I like that could take that spot, who I'm really high on. But right now, I think it is safe to say Brock Purdy is that number 2 quarterback going into 2021. But I think it remains to be seen who will be the number 2 quarterback after 2021. And real quick, I'm not going to talk about every quarterback in the Big 12 as we go on. We're just going to talk about a few more. I'm not going to talk about Texas or Baylor, just for the simple fact they're breaking in a quarterback and there's a quarterback competition going on. So one of those schools, Texas, could very well have the second best quarterback in the Big 12, but for the sake of the video, we're just talking about returning starters. So the next guy who I'm really high on, who I think if he could have a big 2021, is Max Duggan from TCU. And he's the guy we put out some film on, and very similar to not Brock Purdy essentially, but as far as not playing style it is, but very similar as far as kind of some up and down plays and kind of just leaving you wanting just a little bit more, some inconsistencies. And he's still young, and he was dealing with some heart issue or something, COVID, where he wasn't able to play until later on. He was able to practice before the season started, but they thought he was going to have to be held out longer, so he had to kind of play catch up, if you will. But still, I thought he had a pretty good 2020 season. Very good athlete, dynamic runner, and he's shown he can push the ball downfield when needed to. It's just the offense hasn't necessarily called that a lot, and he's been scrambling a lot. So let's look at some numbers real quick, some of these stats from these past, from his 2019 and 2020 season. 25 total passing touchdowns, 16 total rushing touchdowns, so 41 total touchdowns combined. Impressive number for a quarterback. I really think in 2021 he could really come into his own here. 6 point yards per attempt. His first year playing, and then 7.5 yards per attempt last year. So we did see some improvement. His completion percentage went from 53, if I can read my handwriting, to 60. So I think the fact we saw improvement from 2019 to 2020 leads me to believe we're going to see even more improvement in TCU's offense. But again, he's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the Big 12. He can sling it. If you listen to him talk today at the Big 12 Media Days, he talked about how he liked Aaron Rodgers, and he doesn't try to mimic his game off it, but the fact that he likes him, you can kind of see some tendencies of trying to kind of play that style, if you will. So good athlete, good quarterback, has potential. I think 2021 we could see the best version of Max Duggan. Another guy I want to talk about is Jarret Daggy from West Virginia, who has had some hype behind him in the past. Again, we did a video on Jarret Daggy. I encourage you to go check it out, and we talk about him doing a good job of taking what the defense gives him. They don't push the ball downfield enough, in my opinion, and some of that has to do with the offense. And yes, it's a spread offense, but the offensive scheme isn't necessarily push the ball downfield. There's a lot of running, a lot of kind of pre-snap motion going on, quick screens to the receiver, bubble screens, swings, or it may be, and so it doesn't necessarily call for an offense to push the ball downfield. But I think if they can kind of fit that into the offense, we can maybe see Jarret Daggy take the next step. I think he's a good quarterback still, though he puts them in a position to win, but I don't know if he's going to necessarily get you to that position where you want to be as West Virginia fans. But again, could be offensively, but he is a quarterback I like, and he has potential there to progress. Next quarterback we're going to talk about, and the last quarterback that we're going to go into detail on, is Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. Again, a guy like Purdy, like Duggan, like Daggy, who has shown potential, has had glimpses of being really well, and then kind of has not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, whatever it was, but he has kind of came back down from playing at a high level. So just been inconsistent. Good athlete. He's really dynamic. And if you watch the video breakdown of him that we did, we demonstrate and kind of look at his athleticism, what he brings to the table. A few things that we need to improve on, just passing the ball in general, right? And so when he gets in trouble is when his mechanics kind of get faulty, and we see the ball float on him a little bit. And I think he's got a pretty strong arm, in my opinion, but the mechanics have to line up correctly. So whenever they don't, it looks like that there's some too much arrogance on the ball. It kind of wobbles a little bit. Whenever he's able to step into it and really rotate his hips, I think is when we see the best Spencer Sanders version there is. But good athlete, and I think we hope to see a better 2021 version. A few of the other guys in the Big 12, we're not going to talk about Texas guys just because they're competing. Baylor competing, and then we got Kansas State, and they were returning Skylar Thompson, was injured some last year, so they had, forget the first name's escaping me, but Howard played a lot. I think he was a true freshman, but we anticipate Skylar Thompson coming back and having a good last year here. And then, of course, we got Tyler Shuck, who I would assume is most likely the starting quarterback. However, they have Texas Tech does have a quarterback with Henry Colombi, who started some last year whenever Alan Bowman was benched at Texas Tech. So again, Tyler Shuck is the transfer from Oregon into Texas Tech. So still a competition going on there, but we kind of anticipate Tyler Shuck winning, and I think he could be a pretty good quarterback. Some guys have him pretty high on their draft boards, and so he's got a lot of potential. But I think right now the number 2 quarterback in the Big 12 is probably Brock Purdy. You have to lead with him, but I think you can make arguments for Max Duggan because I think he has a lot of potential if he takes the next step. So while going into 2021, I think it's safe to say Brock Purdy is the number 2 quarterback in the Big 12, but I think it's fair to say that Max Duggan can make that push. If Spencer Sanders takes the next steps and improves, maybe he could, and then Jarret Daggy, depending on the offense. But I think Max Duggan probably has the best shot of the returning quarterbacks going into 2021, and then we'll see what Texas brings because they could have a pretty good starting quarterback as well. So, again, just want to talk about the rest of the quarterbacks in the Big 12. We spent a lot of time under Spencer Rattler. We put out several videos of him lately, so I want to kind of dive into some of the other quarterbacks in the Big 12 and just kind of break them down and kind of talk about who the number 2 guy is and kind of so on. Because very similar guys, a lot of guys have showed a lot of good things lately and in the past, but there's been inconsistency. So if these quarterbacks just get a bit more consistent, I think we could see the level of quarterback play in the Big 12 rise this year if there's more consistent play around the board. So that's all I got for the Big 12 quarterbacks. Hope you like the video. Please consider subscribing if you like this, any quarterback content. Like the video if you like it. And I want to hear from you. Who do you think the number 2 quarterback is going into 2021? Who do you think it will be? Who are some other guys that you think can make that push for it? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on our next quarterback-related video.